The champagne tastes like disappointment, which seems appropriate given the circumstances. I'm standing at the edge of Meridian Insurance's annual holiday party, watching my wife Vera adjust her necklace for the third time in 2 minutes. She's nervous about something, and after 15 years of marriage, I can read her tells like a poker manual. "Sit somewhere else," she says without looking at me, her voice carrying that particular brand of ice I've grown accustomed to. "You're embarrassing me." The marketing department's collective attention shifts our way like a pack of wolves catching a scent. 23 faces turn toward us, some curious, others already smirking. Vera Halden, she kept her maiden name for professional reasons, adjusts her necklace again and waves at her colleagues as if nothing happened. I take my bourbon and walk to the corner table. The seat faces the entire room, which turns out to be perfect for what comes next. "Silas Orrin, right?" The voice belongs to Nora Marlin from Legal, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s who slides into the chair across from me. "Mind if I join you? That looked uncomfortable." Before I can answer, Kara Venner from Finance appears with a fresh bourbon. "Vera's loss," she says, settling into the chair to my left. "Some women don't know what they have." Mira Kellren from Design completes the triangle, pulling up a chair and examining my watch with obvious interest. "Is that a vintage Omega? My grandfather had one just like it." Within 10 minutes, I've gone from social exile to the center of attention. The 3 women laugh at my observations about office politics, lean in when I tell stories about my previous career, and generally treat me like I'm the most fascinating man in the room, which, given the competition, might actually be true. Across the room, Vera's champagne stops mid-sip. Her eyes narrow as she watches Nora touch my forearm while making a point about corporate liability. Kara refills my glass without being asked. Mira asks about my journalism background with genuine curiosity. "You're Cole Merrick, aren't you?" Nora's voice drops to a whisper. "The investigative journalist who exposed that pharmaceutical fraud ring." I nod slowly. My pen name wasn't supposed to be public knowledge, but a recent documentary about corporate whistleblowers credited me by both names. Apparently, someone was paying attention. "I thought you looked familiar," Kara says. "That series you wrote about insurance fraud won awards. My professor used it in our ethics class." 11 years under that byline, I confirm. Polk Award winner, if we're keeping score. Mira whistles softly. "Vera never mentioned she was married to a famous journalist." "Vera never asked about my work," I reply, watching my wife's increasingly frantic gestures across the room. She was always more interested in her own career trajectory. Speaking of which, Vera's boss, Felix Roard, is making his way toward our table. Felix is the kind of man who wears expensive suits to compensate for a cheap personality. He's cultivated Vera's career with unusual intensity. Promotions ahead of schedule, projects with sensitive access, mentorship that extends well beyond business hours. "Silas," Felix extends his hand with a politician's smile. "Enjoying the party?" "Immensely," I reply, accepting the handshake. "Great turnout, though I noticed some interesting artwork in your office. That emerging artist Vera recommended has quite a unique style." Felix's grip tightens slightly. "Vera has excellent taste in art." "Absolutely, though I wonder about the provenance of some pieces. My journalism background makes me curious about authentication processes." "Curiosity can be dangerous in corporate environments," Felix says, his smile never wavering. "Especially when it concerns matters beyond one's expertise." I lean back in my chair, matching his smile. "So can forgery, Felix. Fortunately, I've developed expertise in that area too." The handshake ends without warmth. Felix returns to his crowd, but I catch him whispering something urgent to Vera. She glances my way with what looks suspiciously like panic. "That was interesting," Nora observes. "Almost like you two were having a completely different conversation." "We were," I confirm. "Felix just doesn't know it yet." The party continues around us, But the dynamic has shifted. Vera keeps shooting glances toward our table while Felix hovers near her like a protective shadow. Meanwhile, my three companions seem genuinely interested in my stories about corporate fraud investigations. The pharmaceutical case took 18 months to develop, I explained to Mira. Pattern recognition is everything. You start with small inconsistencies, billing irregularities, unusual personnel transfers, changes in routine procedures, then you dig deeper. Like what kind of inconsistencies? Kara asks. Well, for instance, if someone's access credentials are being used for transactions they never authorized, or if deepfake audio files appear on company servers, mimicking voices to authorize wire transfers. Nora's expression sharpens. That's oddly specific. Experience teaches specificity, I reply, though sometimes the patterns are right in front of you. Take art fraud, for example. A gallery owner acquires expensive pieces, displays forgeries in public spaces, then files insurance claims when the originals are mysteriously damaged or stolen. That's elaborate, Mira says. Not really. You just need someone with access to high-value locations and the trust of potential buyers. Someone who can recommend acquisitions and facilitate transactions without raising suspicion. Across the room, Vera excuses herself from Felix's circle and heads toward the restroom. Her walk has the particular urgency of someone who needs to make a private phone call. Excuse me for a moment, I tell my companions. I should probably rescue my wife from whatever crisis she's manufactured. But when I reach the hallway, Vera is already on her phone, speaking in hushed tones near the emergency exit. No, he suspects nothing concrete, she's saying, but he's getting annoying with his questions. We might need to accelerate the timeline. I retreat before she notices me, returning to my table with a clearer understanding of the evening's dynamics. Everything all right? Nora asks. Perfect, I reply, though I think the party's about to get more interesting. The drive home happens in complete silence. Vera stares out the passenger window while I navigate the late evening traffic, both of us processing the evening's revelations in our own ways. She's calculating damage control. I'm planning an investigation. Our house sits in one of those suburban developments where every lawn looks identical and every marriage hides identical secrets. Vera disappears into her home office immediately, claiming she needs to prepare for tomorrow's client presentation. I pour another bourbon and settle into my study. The thing about being an investigative journalist is that suspicion becomes a permanent state of mind. For the past 18 months, I've noticed small changes in Vera's behavior. Late-night text messages she shields from view, unusual spending patterns on our joint credit card, a new cologne scent that occasionally clings to her clothes, something expensive and distinctly not mine. Tonight's phone conversation confirmed what I've been avoiding. My wife is involved in something that requires secrecy and timeline acceleration. I boot up my laptop and begin with the basics. Vera's work laptop sits charging in the kitchen, password protected but not impenetrable. She's always been careless with digital security, using variations of her birthday and maiden name for most accounts. 20 minutes later, I'm scrolling through her email history. The messages between Vera and Felix stretch back 14 months, beginning professionally but gradually shifting tone. By month 6, they're discussing private meetings and confidential projects. By month 10, the language becomes unmistakably intimate. Can't wait for tonight's presentation, Felix wrote 3 weeks ago. The Marriott has excellent room service. Discreet as always, Vera replied, though we should discuss the gallery timeline soon. I screenshot everything, creating a digital trail that would make any prosecutor smile. But the gallery references intrigue me more than the affair. I've suspected Vera was unfaithful for months. Corporate art fraud, however, opens entirely new possibilities. My phone buzzes with a text from Nora. Enjoyed our conversation tonight. Coffee tomorrow? I have some documents you might find interesting. I respond affirmatively, then return to Vera's email archive. The gallery connection becomes clearer as I dig deeper. Felix's wife Miranda owns Prescott Contemporary, a mid-tier gallery specializing in emerging artists. Over the past year, Vera has recommended several acquisitions for Meridian's corporate art collection, pieces that Miranda's gallery subsequently featured in high-profile exhibitions. The insurance angle crystallizes when I cross-reference the recommended pieces with recent claims filed through our company. 3 paintings, collectively valued at $200,000, suffered accidental damage during office renovations. The insurance payouts went directly to Prescott Contemporary for restoration services. Except the damaged pieces were never originals. I recognize the brushwork inconsistencies from my pharmaceutical investigation, similar techniques used to create false documentation. Someone replaced the authentic paintings with forgeries, then staged damage to collect insurance money while selling the originals through private channels. Vera's involvement appears financial rather than creative. Her access credentials authorized the insurance payments, and her art expertise provided authentication credibility. Whether she understood the full scope of the fraud remains unclear. I install a small recording device under Vera's car seat the next morning while she showers. The unit, purchased during my pharmaceutical investigation, provides 8 hours of clear audio and uploads automatically to a secure server. Coffee with Nora happens at a downtown cafe, far from Meridian's usual crowd. She arrives with a manila folder and the expression of someone about to reveal uncomfortable truths. Felix has been sloppy, she begins without preamble. Legal reviews all insurance claims over $50,000 and his wife's gallery has received unusual consideration. She slides 3 documents across the table. Authentication reports, signed by Vera, certifying the artistic and monetary value of pieces that I now know were forgeries. The problem, Nora continues, is that Vera's signatures appear on documents dated after the insurance claims were filed. Someone backdated the authentications to justify the payouts. How long have you known? 6 weeks. I've been building a case file, waiting for the right moment to act. Why tell me instead of reporting it directly? Nora's smile carries an edge I hadn't noticed before. Because Felix destroyed my career 3 years ago. He promised me partnership track, then gave the position to his previous girlfriend when I refused his advances. I want him completely ruined, not just transferred to another department. The recording device in Vera's car provides the final pieces that evening. She meets Felix at a restaurant downtown, their conversation captured with crystal clarity. Silas knows something, Vera says over dinner. He mentioned authentication and provenance tonight. That's not casual curiosity. How much could he possibly know? Felix replies. The transactions are buried in routine insurance processing. He's Cole Merrick, Felix. He exposed a pharmaceutical fraud ring that sent 12 people to prison. If he's suspicious, we need to assume he has evidence. Then we accelerate everything. The Rothschild piece goes to auction next week. After that sale, we have enough to disappear if necessary. What about Miranda? She won't just walk away from the gallery. Miranda will do whatever protects her lifestyle. Besides, she's been planning this longer than either of us. I pause the recording, processing this revelation. Felix's wife isn't a victim of his schemes. She's the architect. The gallery fraud extends beyond simple insurance claims into high-end art trafficking. My phone rings. Vera's number appears on the screen. Where are you? She asks when I answer. Home office, working on a story. What kind of story? Corporate fraud, insurance scams, the usual? Silence stretches for several seconds. I'll be home late, she finally says. Client emergency. Of course, I reply. Take your time. But I know she's not meeting a client. The recording device shows her car hasn't moved from the restaurant parking lot. She's probably planning damage control with Felix and Miranda, trying to determine how much I actually know versus how much I'm bluffing. They're about to find out the difference. The Rothschild auction provides the perfect opportunity for a controlled detonation. According to the recorded conversations, Felix and Miranda plan to sell the authentic piece while displaying a forgery at Meridian's corporate headquarters. The insurance claim will follow within weeks, citing vandalism during a weekend break-in. I spend 3 days preparing multiple pressure points, each designed to trigger maximum chaos at precisely the right moment. First, I contact my former editor at the Washington Herald. Janet Morrison owes me several favors from my Cole Merrick days, and she's always interested in corporate fraud stories with local angles. "How solid is your evidence?" she asks during our encrypted phone call. "Recordings, financial documents, authentication forgeries, and a paper trail connecting 3 separate criminal enterprises," I reply. "Plus, I have an inside source in the company's legal department." Timeline? The auction happens Friday night. I need the story to break Saturday morning before they can file the insurance claim. Done. Send me everything by Thursday. Second, I arrange a meeting with Detective Ray Kowalski, my primary source during the pharmaceutical investigation. Ray now works white-collar crime and has been waiting for a chance to prosecute high-end art fraud. "The FBI's been tracking Prescott Contemporary for 8 months, he tells me over lunch. But we needed evidence of the insurance connection. Your wife's authentication documents provide that link." What happens to Vera? Depends on her level of cooperation. If she's genuinely ignorant about the fraud's scope, she might avoid prosecution. If she's complicit, she's looking at federal charges. And if she agrees to testify against Felix and Miranda? Witness protection, immunity deal, new identity if necessary. I don't mention that Vera's recorded conversations suggest full awareness of the criminal enterprise. That revelation can wait until Ray has enough evidence to proceed without my cooperation. Third, I prepare the social media campaign. Felix and Miranda's reputations depend on their standing in the art community and corporate circles. Public humiliation will destroy their credibility faster than legal proceedings. I create anonymous accounts on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, then begin posting carefully edited excerpts from the recorded conversations. Nothing that compromises the criminal investigation, but enough to generate gossip and speculation. Can't wait for tonight's presentation. The Marriott has excellent room service. Miranda will do whatever protects her lifestyle. After that sale, we have enough to disappear if necessary. The posts gain traction quickly. Art dealers love scandal, and corporate executives fear association with controversy. By Wednesday evening, 3 board members have called Felix requesting explanations for the rumors circulating online. Thursday morning, Vera confronts me in the kitchen. "Someone's been posting private conversations on social media," she says, holding up her phone. "Felix thinks you might be involved." Why would Felix think that? Because you're a journalist with a history of exposing corporate fraud. Those are serious accusations, Vera. Are you saying Felix has something to hide? She studies my expression, searching for tells. After 15 years of marriage, she knows my patterns as well as I know hers. "I'm saying that marriages require trust," she finally replies. "And lately I'm not sure we have that." "Trust is earned," I respond, "and maintained through honesty." What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about the gallery, Vera. I know about the authentication documents. I know about the insurance fraud. Her face goes pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Rothschild piece goes to auction tomorrow night. After that sale, you have enough to disappear if necessary. Your words, not mine." Vera sets down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "You recorded my conversations. I documented evidence of criminal activity. There's a difference. You're going to destroy me. You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." She leaves for work without another word. I spend the morning finalizing my story for Janet, ensuring every detail can be independently verified. The article will run in Saturday's edition, but I've arranged for an online preview to publish Friday evening, just as the auction concludes. My phone rings at noon. Felix's number appears on the screen. "We need to talk," he says when I answer. "About what?" "Your wife's future, and yours." I'm listening. "Meet me at Prescott Contemporary at 6 tonight. Come alone." The gallery sits in the Arts District, surrounded by trendy restaurants and overpriced coffee shops. I arrive 15 minutes early and park across the street, watching Felix pace inside the main exhibition space. Miranda joins him at exactly 6 o'clock, followed by Vera 5 minutes later. They're clearly planning an intervention, hoping to convince me that silence serves everyone's interests. I enter the gallery with my phone recording and a backup device hidden in my jacket pocket. "Silas?" Felix extends his hand as if we're old friends. "Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. Beautiful space. I especially admire the Rothschild piece." Miranda's smile falters slightly. "You have an eye for quality." "Professional hazard. I've learned to distinguish authentic work from clever reproductions." "About that," Vera interjects, "we think there's been some misunderstanding about my role in the authentication process." "No misunderstanding," I reply. "You certified forgeries as authentic artwork, enabling insurance fraud. The recordings are quite clear on your level of involvement." Felix steps closer, his friendly demeanor evaporating. "Those recordings were obtained illegally. They're inadmissible in court." "True, but they're perfectly admissible in newspapers, and social media, and FBI investigations." "What do you want?" Miranda asks. "Justice, accountability, the end of your criminal enterprise." "And if we refuse to cooperate?" I check my watch. "In approximately 2 hours, the Washington Herald will publish a detailed exposé of your art fraud operation. The FBI already has copies of all relevant evidence. Detective Ray Kowalski sends his regards, by the way." Vera sinks into a nearby chair. "You really are going to destroy me." "You destroyed yourself, Vera. I'm just making sure the consequences match the crimes." Felix pulls out his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." "Excellent idea. You're going to need several." Saturday morning arrives with the subtle satisfaction of a plan executed flawlessly. The Washington Herald's online edition features my exposé as the lead story. Local art gallery orchestrates multi-million-dollar insurance fraud. By noon, every major news outlet in the region has picked up the story. My phone hasn't stopped ringing since 6 a.m. Reporters want interviews, law enforcement wants cooperation, and Vera wants explanations I'm not prepared to provide. She's been staying at her sister's house since Thursday night, communicating only through increasingly desperate text messages. The latest arrived an hour ago. "We need to talk. This has gone too far." I'm inclined to disagree. If anything, this hasn't gone far enough. Detective Kowalski calls at 2 p.m. with an update on the investigation. "FBI raided Prescott Contemporary this morning," he reports. "Found 17 forged pieces in the basement, along with authentication equipment and a client list that reads like a who's who of corporate art collectors." "What about Felix and Miranda?" "In custody. They're blaming each other and trying to implicate Vera as the mastermind. Her authentication credentials make her a valuable scapegoat." "And Vera?" "Still cooperating. Her lawyer's negotiating an immunity deal in exchange for testimony. She claims Felix manipulated her into signing documents she didn't fully understand." "Do you believe that?" "Doesn't matter what I believe. Matters what I can prove in court." The irony isn't lost on me. Vera's survival depends on portraying herself as a victim of the same manipulation she used against me for months. The woman who told me to sit somewhere else because I was embarrassing her is now claiming she was too naive to understand the documents she was signing. My doorbell rings at 4 p.m. I open it to find Felix's wife, Miranda, looking considerably less polished than during our gallery meeting. "May I come in?" she asks. "I don't think that's advisable. You're facing federal charges." "Which is exactly why I need to talk to you." Against my better judgment, I let her inside. She settles into the living room chair that Vera used to prefer. an irony that doesn't escape either of us. Felix told me you were the one who exposed everything, she begins. Felix told you correctly. He also told me that Vera was having an affair with him. Also correct. Miranda nods slowly. I've known about Felix's affairs for years. The gallery provided perfect cover for his extracurricular activities. Discreet meetings, out-of-town exhibitions, private viewings with attractive clients. You enabled his behavior. I profited from it. There's a difference. She pulls a manila envelope from her purse and places it on the coffee table between us. What's that? Evidence that Vera's involvement was far more extensive than she's claiming. Bank records, email correspondence, photographs from private meetings. Felix documented everything because he's paranoid about being betrayed. Why are you giving this to me? Because I want immunity too. And the FBI seems more interested in prosecuting the insurance fraud than the adultery. If Vera gets a deal by playing victim, I want a better deal by providing evidence of her actual guilt. I examine the documents without touching them. Bank statements showing wire transfers from Vera's personal account to offshore entities. Email chains discussing authentication schedules and claim timing. Photographs of Vera and Felix at art auctions, clearly comfortable and familiar with each other. This proves she was a willing participant, Miranda continues. Not some naive woman manipulated by her boss. What do you want in return? Help me negotiate with the FBI. Your journalist credentials give you credibility they respect. I'm not your ally, Miranda. I'm the reason you're facing federal charges. True, but you're also the reason Vera might escape consequences for crimes she willingly committed. I assume that bothers you. It does bother me, though I'm not willing to admit that to Miranda. Vera's transformation from adulteress to victim feels like one final manipulation, the ultimate expression of her talent for avoiding accountability. I'll consider it, I tell Miranda, but first, I want to know something. How long has this been going on? The fraud? About 18 months. The affair? Longer. Felix started pursuing Vera almost immediately after she joined the company, but she didn't reciprocate until she realized the financial opportunities. She seduced him for money? She seduced him for lifestyle. The money was just a means to an end. After Miranda leaves, I sit in my study reviewing everything I've learned over the past week. My wife conducted an affair with her boss while participating in a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. She's now claiming victimhood to avoid prosecution, while I'm portrayed as the vindictive husband who exposed everything out of jealousy. The narrative bothers me more than it should. I didn't expose the fraud because Vera was unfaithful. I exposed it because fraud is wrong, regardless of who commits it. The fact that my wife was involved made the investigation personal, but not the motivation. My phone rings. Vera's number appears on the screen. I know Miranda came to see you, she says when I answer. News travels fast. She's trying to destroy me, Silas. Everything she told you is fabricated. The bank records look pretty authentic. Felix forged those documents to protect himself. I never received any money from the gallery sales. What about the offshore accounts? I don't know anything about offshore accounts. Vera, I've heard the recordings. You knew exactly what you were doing. Silence stretches for several seconds. I made mistakes, she finally admits, but I never intended to commit fraud. Felix convinced me the authentications were routine paperwork. For 18 months? I was in love with him, Silas. People do stupid things when they're in love. People do criminal things when they're greedy. Is that what you think of me? I think you made choices that destroyed our marriage and landed you in federal custody. What I think beyond that doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. Then you should have considered that before you told me to sit somewhere else because I was embarrassing you. I hang up before she can respond. Monday morning brings a new development. Vera returns home. I find her in the kitchen at 7 a.m., making coffee as if the past week never happened. She's wearing one of her business suits, hair perfectly styled, makeup applied with professional precision. The only sign of stress is the slight tremor in her hands as she pours cream into her cup. "Good morning," she says, without looking at me. "I thought you were staying at your sister's." My lawyer advised me to maintain normal routines while the investigation continues. "How's that working out for you?" She turns to face me, and I see the exhaustion she's been hiding behind makeup. "I've been suspended from Meridian pending the outcome of federal charges. Felix has been terminated. Miranda's gallery is closed indefinitely. The FBI has frozen all assets connected to the authentication scheme." Sounds like consequences. Sounds like my life is over. I pour my own coffee, noting that she's used the expensive beans she usually reserves for special occasions. Another small manipulation, designed to remind me of better times. "What does your lawyer say about the immunity deal?" "Depends on my testimony against Felix and Miranda. If I provide sufficient evidence of their leadership role in the fraud, I might avoid prosecution." "And if you don't?" 5 to 7 years in federal prison. The number hangs in the air between us like a challenge. She's waiting for me to offer sympathy, support, or forgiveness. I'm not prepared to provide any of those things. "There's something else," she continues. "Miranda's lawyer contacted the FBI with additional evidence. Bank records, email correspondence, photographs. She's claiming I was the mastermind behind the entire operation." "Were you?" "Of course not." "Then you have nothing to worry about." "Silas, she has documents that make it look like I was receiving payments from gallery sales. Felix apparently kept detailed records of our relationship." "Why would he do that?" "Insurance. In case he ever needed to implicate me instead of taking responsibility himself." I study her expression, searching for tells. She's nervous but not panicked, which suggests she's still holding cards I haven't seen. "What aren't you telling me, Vera?" "Nothing. I've been completely honest about my involvement." "Since when?" The question hits harder than I intended. She sets down her coffee cup and stares out the kitchen window at our perfectly manicured lawn. "I know you hate me," she says quietly. "I know you think I'm a criminal and an adulteress and a terrible wife. But I need you to understand that I never meant for any of this to happen." "Which part? The fraud or the affair?" "Either. Both. I made mistakes, but I'm not the mastermind Miranda is claiming I am." "Then prove it." "How?" "Testify honestly. Accept responsibility for your actual involvement. Stop trying to manipulate the narrative." She turns back to me with something approaching anger. "Easy for you to say. You're not facing federal charges. Because I didn't commit federal crimes. You destroyed my career. You destroyed my reputation. You destroyed any chance I had of rebuilding my life. I exposed criminal activity. The destruction was a natural consequence of your choices. Your choices too, Silas. You chose to investigate me. You chose to record my conversations. You chose to contact law enforcement. I chose to do the right thing. You chose revenge. The accusation stings because it contains enough truth to be uncomfortable. My investigation began with suspicion about Vera's affair, not concern about corporate fraud. The criminal evidence was a bonus that provided legal justification for personal motivations. Maybe, I admit. But the crimes were still real. The fraud still happened. The victims still lost money. And now I'm going to lose everything. You lost everything when you decided to authenticate forgeries for your boyfriend. Vera's composure finally cracks. She throws her coffee cup against the kitchen wall, sending ceramic shards and brown liquid across the white paint. "I hate you," she screams. "I hate what you've done to me. I hate what you've done to us." "There is no us, Vera. There hasn't been for months. Because you're a cold, vindictive man who cares more about being right than being married. Because you're a criminal who cares more about money than being honest." She storms out of the kitchen, leaving me to clean up the broken ceramic. The metaphor feels appropriate. My phone rings an hour later. Detective Kowalski's number appears on the screen. "We need to talk," he says when I answer. "Miranda's evidence changes everything." "How so?" "Turns out your wife was more involved than anyone realized. The bank records show she received over $400,000 from gallery sales over the past year. She told me Miranda forged those documents. We had them independently verified. They're authentic." I sink into my desk chair, processing this revelation. Vera hasn't just been lying to me about the scope of her involvement. She's been lying to the FBI, her lawyer, and herself. What happens now? The immunity deal is off the table. She's looking at the same charges as Felix and Miranda. Federal prison? Likely, unless she has information about other criminal activities we don't know about. After Kowalski hangs up, I sit in my study contemplating the wreckage of my marriage. Vera isn't just an adulteress who made poor decisions. She's a criminal who orchestrated a sophisticated fraud scheme while lying to everyone about her involvement. The woman who told me I was embarrassing her has spent the past year embarrassing herself in ways I never could have imagined. The federal courthouse steps provide an appropriately dramatic setting for what I assume will be our final conversation. Vera emerges from her lawyer's office at 4 p.m., looking like a woman who's just received very bad news. She spots me immediately and walks over with the determined stride of someone who has nothing left to lose. "They're offering me a plea deal," she says without preamble. "Congratulations." 15 years. The number stops me cold. I expected consequences, but 15 years feels like a lifetime. "What did your lawyer advise?" "Take the deal. The alternative is 25 to life if they can prove racketeering charges." Racketeering? Apparently, the authentication scheme connected to organized crime figures in New York. The FBI thinks I was laundering money for art theft operations. Were you? I don't know. Maybe. Felix handled most of the financial arrangements. Her honesty surprises me. For the first time in months, she's admitting uncertainty instead of claiming innocence. "There's something else," she continues. "Miranda's cooperation led them to a storage facility in Baltimore. They found over $2 million worth of stolen artwork, all authenticated with my signature." "Vera, I never saw those pieces, Silas. I signed authentication documents for photographs, not actual artwork. Felix told me they were insurance appraisals for corporate collections. Do you expect me to believe that? I expect you to understand that I was manipulated by someone far more sophisticated than I realized." We stand in silence for several minutes, watching federal agents escort other defendants in and out of the courthouse. The machinery of justice operates with mechanical efficiency, processing criminals and victims with equal indifference. "I need to ask you something," Vera says finally. "What?" "If you had known the full scope of what Felix was doing, would you still have exposed everything?" The question forces me to confront motivations I've been avoiding. My investigation began with personal betrayal, not civic duty. I wanted to hurt Vera for humiliating me, not protect society from corporate fraud. Yes, I answer honestly, but for different reasons. What reasons? Because fraud is wrong, regardless of who commits it. Because victims deserve justice. Because criminals should face consequences. Even if the criminal is your wife? Especially if the criminal is my wife. Vera nods slowly, as if confirming something she already suspected. "I used to think you were weak," she says. "Passive. Content to let life happen around you instead of taking control. And now? Now I think you're the strongest person I know, and the most dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "You have principles, real ones, the kind that don't bend when it's convenient or profitable or emotionally satisfying." Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's supposed to be an apology. She reaches into her purse and pulls out an envelope with my name written in her familiar handwriting. "What's this?" "Everything you need to understand what really happened. Bank records, email correspondence, photographs, recordings, the complete truth about my involvement in Felix's operation." Why are you giving this to me? Because you're going to write about it. And when you do, I want the story to be accurate. You want me to expose you further? I want you to expose the truth, whatever that might be. I accept the envelope without opening it. What happens after the plea deal? Federal prison, probably in West Virginia or Pennsylvania. 15 years if I behave myself. And after that? I don't know. Start over, I suppose. New name, new city, new life. Will you? Start over? I hope so. But I'll never be able to forget what I did, or what I lost because of it. She turns to leave, then stops and looks back at me. For what it's worth, Silas, you were never embarrassing. I was just too selfish to appreciate what I had. Vera. Yes? Take the plea deal. 15 years is better than 25 to life. I know. My lawyer's filing the paperwork tomorrow. She walks away without looking back, disappearing into the crowd of lawyers and defendants and federal agents who populate the courthouse steps every afternoon. I return home and open the envelope in my study. The documents inside tell a story of systematic fraud, personal betrayal, and criminal sophistication that exceeds everything I uncovered during my investigation. Vera wasn't just Felix's accomplice. She was his equal partner, responsible for authenticating over 50 forged pieces and laundering nearly $3 million through offshore accounts. The evidence is overwhelming and incriminating and absolutely authentic. But it's also evidence of manipulation by someone far more experienced in criminal enterprises than either Vera or Felix realized. The organized crime connections run deeper than anyone suspected, involving international art theft, money laundering, and murder. My wife wasn't just an adulteress who made poor decisions. She was a victim of criminals who used her expertise and credentials to legitimize a sophisticated fraud operation. The distinction matters, even if the legal consequences remain the same. I spend the evening writing her story, trying to balance accountability with context, justice with mercy. The article will run in next Sunday's Herald, providing the complete truth about the Prescott contemporary fraud case. It's the last story I'll ever write about my wife. After 15 years of marriage and 1 week of investigation, I finally understand who Vera really is. A woman capable of both criminal behavior and genuine remorse, neither purely victim nor purely villain. The complexity suits her. It also explains why I fell in love with her in the first place, and why that love survived long enough to destroy us both.